do some of them look like us? I know this is an odd question to say, but I think some of them do look like us. What does that mean? Have they infiltrated? There's a lot of questions here. If you're doing real counterintelligence, you'd have to ask them, how deep does this get? So what I would say is, what we really need to do is figure out the truth, however beautiful or ugly it is. And I don't think that's easy, but it is possible. And that's what all of this disclosure, in my view anyway, I would like to see it getting us toward what is true. And we have to be brave enough to face it.
For those that are not familiar with the Five Eyes, it's the intelligence sharing alliance between the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand.
The problem is that our elected leaders don't really represent us. You know, they're paid for by major corporations, and the major corporations have a very vested interest in this particular subject, so that we cannot rely upon them. You have to be aware of strangers bearing gifts. That this is an extraordinarily important issue here. That we as a human family have to come to grips with our place in the universe in relationship to the existence of extraterrestrial civilization. That's the key conversation that we have to have. And what we have to do is we have to develop a new worldview. What we have to do is we have to evolve a human worldview that does not believe that we're not only not in the physical center of the universe, but that in fact we're not even at the pyramid, the apex of the pyramid of all sentient life in the universe. This is something we as citizens, as human beings, have to come to grips with. Because if we can step into this and understand a valid place that we have in our universe, we can take away the argument that the other side is making is, we can't tell you. Because if we did, it would be catastrophic. That you would all basically run and jump out of first-story windows. That's their theory. They refer to this as catastrophic disclosure. This is fundamentally, at root, a theological problem. A theological problem. This is our major pathway to the future. Not waiting for an extraterrestrial civilization to come and save us. We have to save ourselves.
Could you go into some detail about who the corporate interests are that are controlling the narrative we're hearing from our government, and who they might be, and exactly what those interests are?
The people who have been on the inside for a long time, who are trying to get the government structures to divulge more of this secret information, at least to the Senate Intelligence Committee, and that is to Rubio and to Mark Warner, if not even to their staffs, have a great concern. And it goes farther than just them losing their security clearance. They have a great concern that the disclosure of what it is that they know about this subject, if it were revealed, would constitute what they refer to as catastrophic disclosure. And by catastrophic disclosure, they mean that what has been done in the past 75 years by what they refer to as the legacy group, and what it is that they have been concealing would be so devastating to the credibility of the American government that the American people would lose confidence in their governing structures. There is still an adequate degree of credibility in the governing structures.
Haven't hit bottom.
That they feel that they are still in control.
Catastrophic
and
would bring down the government.
And that if in fact this information were revealed, that they would lose control. And they believe that they are in control of the entire economic system, the financial system, the educational institutions, the banking structures, etc. And that if in fact the people lose confidence utterly in them, that there will be chaos.
Could this government get capable of what they are? Could they do some kind of limited disclosure like, oh, by the way, we were always thought maybe there was something there. We weren't really sure. But now we are sure. There is UFOs and aliens. But by the way, we're tracking an invasion. So here we are, false flag, alien invasion. Government control, and maybe population control, like the pharmaceutical industry going with the government. Total control of what they got with the pandemic.
You need to be careful of this one.
Good heavens.
This is the false flag theory that Stephen Greer has promulgated, considerably, allegedly having access to inside information, and that's what they're doing. They're back engineering the craft, and they're flying them around to scare us, and they're going to have a false flag operation and establish total dominion over us all, etc. All I can do is point out is that I don't believe that's true.
Yeah.
I'm probably more familiar than most people you'll talk to about the type of covert operations that the agencies engage in, the covert operations, the false flags they've engaged in. I mean, I knew about the North Woods plans and stuff years ago, and I don't believe that's what's happening here. And just because bad people are capable of really, really bad things doesn't mean that they're going to happen. We as citizens have to make sure that we're alert. We can't be naive about the conceivable chance that something like that could happen. We have to be on guard against that type of thing. But I do not believe that the evidence supports that. I believe that there is, in fact, the evidence leans much more in favor of there being an actual extraterrestrial civilization that is visiting our planet. And they've been coming and going, and that our executive branch has known about this for 75 years. They've been keeping it secret because they wanted to get access to the technology to develop weapons, figure out what the metals were so they could build fighter craft that would be bulletproof, to have a propulsion system so they could fly their jets faster, so they could, as I pointed out, maintain their continued privileged access to the strategic raw materials in the planet, to establish full spectrum dominance over the planet, as they made clear in their 1992 United States Defense Department Policy Planning Guidance Documents. It's a much more mundane type of conspiracy that they're engaged in. It's not a false flag thing. It's an attempt to keep this information secret so they can capitalize on it and exercise control over the world. That's what's happening. So I don't think there's going to be a false flag operation. Sure. I don't believe it's true.
I hope you're right.
It's important not to fall prey to that paranoid worldview.
Right before 9/11, Rumsfeld announced in the newspapers that we were having $31 billion amount of missing money from our...
Trillion.
Yeah. Was it trillion? No, I thought it was 31.
Trillion.
2 trillion.
2.6
Okay.
trillion.
Yeah.
Okay. And then 9/11 happened, and that, that obscured that important disclosure. Does anybody here have any theories about whether that money is actually going into black projects, black money, special access programs, and that's really funding a huge space project or research on, black money, yeah, on this particular subject about which we are learning nothing.
So Rumsfeld in July of 2001. Keep in mind, the Bush team was brand new. So this was no skin off their nose to talk about all the Pentagon mismanagement that they had inherited. So here he is talking to the Senate Armed Services Committee saying there are $2.6 trillion that is unaccounted for in discrepancies. That does not, and then actually that was amended to 2.3 trillion, and then came 9/11, boom, and then that issue just went away. Then a guy named 𝗧𝗿𝗍𝗍𝗍𝗍 was in charge of looking over the discrepancies, and miracle upon miracles, they discovered, no, there's actually no discrepancies at all whatsoever, and the whole thing went away. That's literally what happened. But they were talking about the discrepancies, and this is all basically to track the previous Clinton administration, how they've mismanaged everything. But that didn't mean that 2.6 or 2.3 trillion was actually gone. It meant a lot was probably gone. It meant that when you're trying to balance all the checkbooks, all the accounting systems, as it were, in the Pentagon, they were not matching properly. So there was no way properly to do an audit of the system. So it could have been like any amount of money that was siphoned out. And obviously there had to be a lot that was taken out. There's a brilliant lady around named Catherine Austin Fitts. She's a good friend of mine. Probably a lot of you know about her. Catherine has spoken a great deal. She was Undersecretary of HUD, Housing and Urban Development, under George Bush Sr., financial whiz. She's talked about this over and over again. And it is her belief also that basically the U.S. federal government is designed so that it cannot be audited, like God himself could not audit the federal government, for a reason, because there's too much criminality there, too much money laundering. That's her intention, and she's right. And also her belief is that the U.S. or global economy is like an open window where the money just flows out the window, going into where? Other infrastructures. And she believes, and I believe with her, that at least some of that's gone into UFO-related projects, absolutely, and probably a lot.
Okay, so
we just don't know how much.
Okay, all right. So in fact, there is possibility, at least it's not a wild theory, that some of that money might possibly be funding government programs,
absolutely,
into research and reverse engineering programs and so on.
We don't have the proof. We don't have the proof, but yes, I think it's a perfectly logical theory. It's one that I hold.
Okay, Arizona is the number 7 state for UFOs, and it holds that line and has for the last 8 years. Maricopa County, which is the Phoenix area, is the number 2 county of over 3,000 counties in the country for UFO sighting reports. And zip code 85001, downtown Phoenix, is the number 1 zip code in the country for UFO sightings.
March 1997, Phoenix, right?
Yeah.
And I think I had an interview book of about 25 people that I was able to interview, and the thing that first emerged was the timeline. There were people that were coming from Tucson to Phoenix for a sporting event, and they were about the 6:55, 7 p.m. mark. A whole family saw this gigantic triangle come toward them and pass over them, and they estimated the length of it based on how long it took to go over their car. And then there were people who were hitting other places on the timeline as if many things happened on that night. And the big triangle was one. 3 huge orange glowing spheres over Luke Air Force Base was another. I went up to the house so I could see through a camera myself of the man who took that footage that ended up on TV with the necklace of lights, and you probably all remember that. And from where he had his camera and was showing, here's where I was out on the deck, and this is where I was aimed. And where he was aimed was downtown in Phoenix. Later on, I think it was Bruce Maccabee did an investigation, and he thought that it was in the mountains that were straight west. So you had a whole series of events that were occurring. The one thing I want to share, there might be a few of you who were listening to Coast AM with Art Bell and me. It was, I think, the night or two after. And I had been starting to spool out some of these interviews, and I got a phone call from a man that worked in a computer company in Cranford, New Jersey, and one of their clients was the Pentagon. And it's a big story about what they were doing and why they were making the computers they were, but that's how he knew to call me. He said, I just wanted you to know that tonight one of our most important defense satellites was melted by whatever came to Phoenix.